Hey guys, welcome back. All right, today we're gonna go over D Dorian and what exactly that means. You know, last lesson and last week we went over C major Ionian, right? That was the first mode of in the C major scale. So what that meant was, remember, it meant that there were no sharps or flats in that entire scale. It's basically C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then back to the C octave, right? We played it like this. Right, which meant C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. We also learned it down here in this version of it, which was basically using the third degree here on the next string because we have the E here. We have the E here. So it was, then here comes the A, right? Because the other A is here. So here are the octaves, right? So that was C major Ionian. Well, now we're gonna move into C, well, it's basically still in the key of C, but we're gonna do D Dorian. So what does that mean? That just means it's the second mode, it's the natural order of the modes, right? We have Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, which is the natural minor. Remember, that's the one where A was connected to C because the Aeolian mode is directly connected to the Ionian mode. Remember the box of four? So now we're going to do D Dorian. All that really means, it's not really that complicated. All that really means is that we're going to start the C major scale, but we're going to start it at the second degree, which is starting from D. So that means it's D Dorian, that's the second mode. So if we do Ionian, C, well, if we were starting them from the second degree, it would be D Dorian. And that means we would start here. Then we would just continue the exact same scale we played in C, except we're going to resolve to the higher octave of D. So it's going to happen like this. Or the other version of playing the major scale, remember when we played it here with these larger steps? We're going to start it here. Or, now we're getting the connection of why it's so important to learn the note placement on the fretboard and all the different variations. You can play the exact same thing. And why the tabs don't really tell you the story, right? Or we're going to also do D Dorian starting like this. Now, if you notice, I played all the exact same notes. I played the exact same scale, but I was putting my fingers in different locations of the fretboard. I can continue to do this all over the fretboard because the notes live in different areas of the fretboard. And that's the idea behind this class, to make those two connections. We're hoping to do two things: learn the modes, and at the same time, learn the fretboard by location of the notes. Thus, if I know that I have a D here, that's D Dorian, and I know the pattern of D Dorian, well then that means that wherever I find the D note, no matter what octave it's in, so here's D, now I want to play D Dorian in this location. Now remember, there's a little trick here that happens between the G and the B string where we have to move the scale up one fret because of the way that the guitar is tuned. Remember, when you tune your guitar, G to do the B note is actually here instead of the traditional 5th fret for the next string, right? Oh wow, this thing's out of tune. Right, the famous G string out of tune. So, all right. So, you know, we typically use the 5th fret for the string under it to tune it. Except the B string, we do here on the 4th fret. That's because the B string, you got to move everything up one fret. Then from there down, it's the exact same thing. We're back to 5. Right? So that means that if I'm going to do D Dorian, but now I'm going to start at this octave of D, then that goes like this. Same notes, just at a higher octave. Here's D over here on the 12th fret. Same exact scale, D Dorian. I'm just following the pattern of, if it were in C major, I'd be starting at the 2nd degree. So or okay. Now, I'm going to stop real quick. I hope you're making some connections there. By the way, you know, at any time, by one of the suggestions made in one of the comments, by the way, thank you to everybody who's been commenting on the videos. It is extremely helpful, and I really, really benefit from the feedback. Like I said, I'm new to this whole thing, so I'm learning as I go along, you know. So what I want to say is, by the way, you could always stop the video and back up, you know, and watch that part of the scale that I just played. You could also use the settings menu down here. Pick it up, you can slow down the speed, and you can watch it a little bit slower, you know. Just basically what I'd like for you to do is actually stop and workshop these things one at a time. So in other words, like the stuff that we learned in the first video, in the Ionian video, do a little workshop for yourself. That's what I do. Like when I find a piece of music that I'm struggling with, or even a concept in theory, I basically do almost like exercises. I call them workouts, you know what I mean, or workshops, where I literally would just sit there and play exactly that for 15 to 20 minutes. So like if I was struggling with, I don't know, let me say I'm doing here G Mixolydian, right? Right? So if I want to learn to play that faster or learn to play it, I will just sit there and drill over and over and over again, right? Then backwards. So what I'm basically doing is I'm just burning that scale pattern in my head. So I know that when I'm playing through a scale and I'm going through a piece of music, as I'm moving up, since I already know the modes and I know the connections and the interactions between the notes of the two, I already know the patterns in my head. So all I got to do is stay in that box, and I can pretty much do whatever I want. I can run around in that box because all those notes apply to the scale. And you really can't hit a wrong note when you're doing that. So that's what I'm hoping you find a piece here that either catches your attention or you want to work on. Just stop the video, master, let's say D Dorian. Let's get back to that, right? Right? So let's get back to that. So now we could basically say, which is, remember when we used the H intro? That was a great way to actually hear the notes in your head and make the connection. So, right? So it's right? So those are all the notes from D Dorian. Right? So the good thing is that once you start learning that and burning that into your playing, is that it starts to become natural. You start to actually look at the fretboard, and you can superimpose the scale and the note location right there looking at the fretboard. So I know if I'm, you know, this is, again, I'm going back to the whole thing about the tabs, man, and the notes, where this is always C. Oh, obviously if you drop tune the guitar and tune it down like to E flat, or, you know, and tune everything down half step, that's different. I'm talking about normal tuning. And by the way, this is all drop D tuning. I always tune the top string to D because most Tool songs are tuned that way. So that means that this is always C. I don't care where you are on the fretboard. That is C. And this is C. And that's C. And this is C. And this is C. and that C, and that C, and that C, and that C. See? So I already know, see? So I already know where all the C's are. Why? Because I've done these scales workshops, right, and drills over and over and over again, where finally I just look at the guitar and I'm like, oh, okay, I already know where all the C's are. Well, then that tells me then where all the D's are. The D's are one whole step away from the C. There's no other way for you to put them. You can't put it anywhere else unless you retune the guitar. So if that's C, well, then that's D. The next string open is D. That's D, right? This is D. This is D. This is D. That's D. That's D. This is D. So we're going to make that connection as we move along and we keep going here, right? We're going to make the connection between the using points of reference to find the note that you're actually looking for by doing exercises like this. But let's get back to D Dorian, what this is really about, right? So let's get back to using H as the example. So, you know, H is just basically, if you really list out the notes, what you're doing here is open D, then A, F, C. So that's C flicking off the D and then back up to the A. Then repeat that again. Except this time you're going to slide down to the B and resolve on the G. Right? So it's all the notes from D Dorian. It's just the way and in the intervals between the two, and obviously the timing, that make that happen, right? Also, the way you hear it on the record has a delay on it, and that's why it sounds a little bit different when you play it through the delay. So I'm going to play the delay now. Let me turn all this stuff off. This thing's acting kind of crazy. So there I got the delay going. So I'm going to play it the exact same way. Well, let me turn off the delay first. I'm going to play it without the delay first. Now we'll turn the delay on, and you'll see how much of an effect this actually has to do with this little melody. See the difference that makes? Obviously, effects make a total difference in music when you're playing music, but I wanted to play it without the delay so you could actually hear the notes and not make it sound like, well, wait a second, that sounds like a double hit on that note. It's not. It's coming from the delay and the effect. So, all right. So now let's get to the actual chorus part of the song, right? The part where it goes, right? Let's look at those notes real quick. Those notes are open D, A, F, and G. Well, let's look at it in the Dorian scale. So those notes are from the Dorian scale. That's why it sounds so good. I mean, if you find the scale that you're working in and just continue to grow off of that, the rest of the song starts to fall into place. So it's, right, because this is open D, this is A, F, G, D, A, F, G, or let's play it a little different, right? So you saw that? So that's D, A, F, G from that version of the Dorian, right? So you know, so that's the idea. The idea is to find the notes and then find the chord tones that go over those notes that fit within the scale. All right, so let's move into the solo in H. The solo in H is actually, it's a little tricky when you're moving around the neck so much, but the concept of it is pretty easy. All the notes, again, are coming from D Dorian. The notes start with A, but it's an A5 power chord, right? This is an A5 power chord. A, E is the 5th degree of A, and then here's A again. So That's an A5 power chord, except we're playing it up here above the 12th fret, which is in the highest octave. So we're actually playing it down here. Now this, we're actually not gonna play this A, we're gonna deaden the strings with this, so we're really only hitting those two notes, but we're gonna wail on them, okay? So the concept's gonna be A. Now we're gonna move into this little transition, which is E, D, C, D. But we're playing it in octave chords, which means we're playing E, we're deadening the string right under it, and we're hitting that E octave. Now we're going to do the same octave chords, but we're going to slide from G to A. Then the last one is F to G. So it's... Now we're going to go, same concept, C to D. Right? So again, let's follow that pattern real quick. A5 with only these two bottom strings being hit. These two. Right after that, we go to the E, D, C, right on top of it. G, A. The last one is F to G, C, D. Unison bend. What's a unison bend? A unison bend is, this is a C note, that's D. I'm gonna pull the C to the D. But I'm going to be striking the D at the same time. That's why it's called a unison bend. So I'm basically trying to match the two tones. See how they even out? The idea behind a unison bend is that when you modulate the top string by releasing and increasing the bend, you start to create a dissonance there. So listen to it. Sorry, I hit the top string. You hear that wave? So you can do a unison bend anywhere on the neck, really, but the easiest place to do it is using the third string, because you only have to go 2 frets down to find the next one. Remember the thing about the G and the B string? So that means if I want to do a D to E unison bend, now, what Tool song starts with probably the most infamous, recognizable unison bend? Sober starts with an A unison bend. G to A. Then you start slowly releasing it. Right? So that's a unison bend. We'll visit that maybe in another lesson or something. I want to stick here with the scale thing, but I just wanted to show you that because it is an important part of the solo. So again, real quick, A5 power chord. We're only hitting the bottom here above the 12th fret. Then we're going to go E, D, C, D. G, A. F, G. C, D. Unison bend. And that's the solo. So I'm not going to go over the entire song here. That could be a whole other lesson. I'll do a playthrough. I'll do a lesson on the song later on. But I did want to use this song so I can get the notes from this scale, and I could show you how these notes from this scale apply to the entire song. There is a key change in the middle of the song in the bridge. I didn't want to get into that because I don't want to start confusing the lesson into something else. I just want to expose you guys to C major from the first lesson from Ionian, right? That's the first degree. The second mode, starting from the second degree of the C major scale, is Dorian. That second note is D, so it's D Dorian. Those are the notes we're using. And the song that is mostly recognizable when you hear the intro is H. That entire intro is in D Dorian. So when you hear that scale, it should pretty much sound familiar. I'm hoping you learned something from this course, man, and I'm hoping you keep coming back. And next week we're going to go into Phrygian. We're going to do E Phrygian. Phrygian's the 3rd degree. And sober, part of sober is in E Phrygian. So I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be including some notes there from sober. So I hope you're enjoying the class. If you're learning something, please like and subscribe, tell a friend, leave me a comment, let me know if is there a concept that you'd like for me to revisit or maybe change something. Like I've been taking suggestions from people, adding the chapters to the bottom, not playing the music in the back, because I played the music in the back kind of like an ambiance thing, but people were saying it was kind of distracting. So I'm going to try this lesson without the music. If you like the music, you want me to bring it back, let me know. Let me know in the comments, man. I answer all the comments. So I really appreciate you guys watching, man. Please, thank you for watching, and please keep coming back. Thanks.